So to start with this course, we're going to talk about how you design a video game. Through the course, you will be designing and then building your own game. So we need to talk about how we design good games, what the features of games are. We're going to start off with possibly the most basic part, which is genre. So the genre of a game, we'll talk about that in a wee second. By the end of this, you should be able to describe some of the main features of different game genres, and be able to identify what genre a game falls into by looking at extracts of it. Okay. So a genre is the kind of broad style or category that we would use to describe a game. Games that fit into the same genre will often share a lot of similarities, and that's why we group them this way. The word genre actually does apply to different areas as well. So you could talk about the genre of films, you could talk about the genre of books. In the same way, we can talk about game genres as well. So there are lots of different genres that we can discuss. Take a wee second, have a think, see what words pop into your mind when we say genre. Okay. Hopefully, at least one of these popped into your head. Okay, so broad categories that we use for genres include these things. This isn't an exhaustive list. These are just some examples of genres that we could talk about. I'm not going to go through and explain what they all are. Just really going to mention a couple of the odder ones. So RPGs, those are your main roleplay games. Roleplay games are ones where you take on the perspective of a character and you follow them through a story. You are typically in charge of their development, so you'll get like experience or ability points, and you have to spend them to provide upgrades, or you are improving their equipment and their gear. But all this goes on through the course of a story. Okay. Strategy games are ones that not many people could describe. So a strategy game is one where you're taking a much broader look at an environment. So you're not following an individual or a group of characters. You're looking at a much larger scale. So this would be, for example, where you're in charge of like a village, and you are trying to develop their resources. You are in charge of directing where all of the people go. Okay, or it could be things like war game simulators, where you're in charge of an army and you direct the troops around. Okay, so this has an element of strategy to it, because you are in charge of directing what all of the little characters do. RTS, on top of this, is short for real-time strategy. So these are games where you are directing your view of things, but there are others, your opponents are doing the same at the same time as you. Okay. So you are working in real time. The kind of flip of that, it would be called a turn-based strategy, where you take your moves and then they take theirs. Other ones I want to mention would be casual games. So casual games are the things that you would see on, like on your smartphone, or that you could play through a web browser. These are very simple, straightforward games, ones that you can easily dip in and out of. So they don't require hours worth of focus to try and progress through a story. They're very simple, straightforward games. This would be like, for example, things like Candy Crush. Right? The game itself is very straightforward. Okay. Rhythm games, those are ones where you have to basically match a rhythm. So it's things like Guitar Hero. So through the game, you are completing physical activities. Right? Most of these are fairly self-explanatory. Educational games, those are ones where you're trying to learn something. So for example, apps like Duolingo fall into this. So it is trying to teach you something, but it is teaching you through a game style. This is called gamification. So actually, like taking an educational activity and making it into a game. This is actually a good way of learning things because the process of getting like experience points or rewards or passing checkpoints keeps people motivated. A good example of this actually is learning how to do keyhole surgery. The device that is used to do keyhole surgery by surgeons in hospitals is very complicated to use. You basically got like two long sticks and they cross over. So your right hand's controlling the left side and your left hand's controlling the right, and you got to kind of wiggle them around. So, and actually training to do this, they obviously can't train on a real person because you would kill them. So somebody actually developed a game to do this, which has massively improved the skills of the people who have used it. The last one I just want to mention quickly would be simulation games. These are ones where the game simulates a real world event. So you get like racing simulators, you get flight simulators, also things like you get really weird ones like lorry driving simulators. It also includes things like The Sims, where you are taking on control of a group, okay, and things like Roller Coaster Tycoon, right, where you're building up like a theme park. Okay, you're simulating real world scenarios. Okay. Now, when we talk about a genre, the games that fall into these categories will share certain features, right? You will look at games that are all like RPGs, and while stylistically they will look different, so one might be set in like medieval Italy, another one might be set in the future, up on a space station or whatever, the actual play of the game is very similar. You are doing the same sorts of things. Okay, some genres are really easy to explain. Things like driving games or sports games, right? For a sports game, it's a sport. You're playing a sport, right? FIFA is a sports game. You are playing football, right? It follows the rules of football. Okay. Driving games as well, like racing games, very easy to describe. You are racing in a car or spaceship or motorbike or whatever. Okay. Same idea. Doesn't matter what the vehicle is. The game's genre is the same. Okay. Some genres are more difficult to describe. But again, similarly, if you have multiple games within a genre, you can see the similarities between them. And to put an extra wee twist on things, games can fall into more than one genre. Right? Quite a common thing with modern games which are complex, they might fall into multiple genres. For example, the Fallout games, at their core they are RPGs. You are following a character through a story, but you could describe them as action adventures because you're exploring, you're discovering new regions. There's a lot of action because there's monsters and baddies trying to attack you pretty much all the time. They're shooters because that's the main combat mechanic that's used. They are survival horror because you're basically dying constantly through the game and you've got to keep yourself alive. Right? So they do fall into multiple categories, and that's fine. Right? Absolutely possible for games to do that. Okay, and really good games blend multiple genres well. To provide a kind of deep game experience.